The most dangerous person in your life right now is not hiding from you. They are close enough to know your plans, track your fears, and read your blind spots. Machiavelli identified this pattern 500 years ago, and it has not changed once. The rulers who dismissed his warning did not fall slowly. They fell in a single night. What you are about to receive are all 7 hidden enemy rules. Volume 1 of the Machiavelli Code. Machiavelli was not a philosopher in the comfortable academic sense. He was a strategist who survived. He served the Florentine Republic, watched it collapse, and was imprisoned and tortured by the men who replaced it. What emerged from that experience was the Prince, not a theory of governance, but a field report. And the most dangerous section of that report was not about warfare or external conquest. It was about the people already inside your walls, the ones you fed, elevated, and trusted. Machiavelli wrote that more rulers were destroyed from within than from without. The hidden enemy is not a stranger arriving with a weapon. The hidden enemy is someone already holding your keys. This volume covers 7 rules for identifying, understanding, and neutralizing that specific threat. Each rule builds on the last. By Rule 7, the entire pattern will be visible, and you will not be able to unsee it. Rule 1. If someone always agrees with you. Machiavelli's first warning about hidden enemies begins not with hostility, but with harmony. The person who agrees with everything you say is not confirming your brilliance. They are performing it. Agreement, in Machiavelli's framework, is a strategy, not a truth. He wrote in The Prince that the ruler who surrounds himself with flatterers loses reality before he loses anything else. Once you lose reality, you begin making decisions based on what you want to be true, not what is. The flatterer does not necessarily begin with malicious intent. Often, they do not. They start with genuine agreement, and then they discover that agreement is currency. It buys favor, access, proximity, and eventually influence, always at your expense, never theirs. Consider a man who built a business over 8 years. His inner circle agreed with every decision he made. No one challenged the expansion plan when the numbers said it was premature. No one raised concern when key clients were leaving faster than new ones were entering. No one questioned the hiring pace, the cash position, or the product roadmap. No one spoke, because speaking had never been rewarded in that room. Agreement always had been. The business collapsed in 14 months. Every person in that circle found a soft landing within weeks. They had seen it coming. Not one of them had said a word. Agreement had been their armor, not his. Here is the shift that happens once you understand this rule. You stop measuring loyalty by frequency of agreement. You measure it by whether someone is willing to tell you something you do not want to hear. The voice in the room that occasionally frustrates you is often the only one genuinely on your side. Machiavelli's first rule of hidden enemies is not to watch for hostility. It is to watch for perfect harmony. Rule 2 takes this further, and the answer will force a painful recalibration about your closest relationship. Rule 2. Why your closest ally will betray you first. This is the rule people resist most, because accepting it requires admitting something uncomfortable about proximity itself. Machiavelli observed across every court he studied that betrayal almost never originates from declared enemies. It originates from the people you gave the most access to. Distance is natural protection. Closeness is natural exposure. The person closest to you, the advisor, the confidant, the longtime ally, holds 3 things simultaneously. They hold access, they know your plans, your fears, your private thinking, and where your blind spots live. They hold motivation. They have invested years near you and often feel a quiet entitlement to more than they have received. They hold opportunity. Because they are trusted, they can act without raising suspicion until it is already too late. Machiavelli warned that a prince must be careful with elevation, because elevation generates expectation without guarantee. When that expectation is not met through recognition, reward, or advancement, proximity curdles into resentment. Resentment held by someone with unrestricted access is one of the most dangerous combinations inside any structure of power. This is not theory. It played out in every Florentine court Machiavelli observed. It plays out in modern organizations daily. Consider a woman who mentored a junior colleague across 4 years in 2 companies. She gave her contact network, her strategic frameworks, and her creative methodology, everything she had developed. The colleague departed, absorbed the network, positioned herself publicly as an original thinker, and cut contact without warning. The mentor was not betrayed by a competitor she had been monitoring. She was betrayed by her closest student. Machiavelli would not have been surprised. He would have asked one precise question. What did you give her access to, and at what stage in the relationship did you give it? This rule is not a mandate for isolation. Machiavelli was not writing a guide for living alone. It is a mandate for staged trust. Proximity earned across demonstrated behavior, not awarded in the early chapters. Access should expand in proportion to proven action under pressure, not in proportion to how much you like someone. The person who has earned full access over years is a different risk than the person who received it in weeks. Rule 3. Never reveal your next move to anyone. Machiavelli understood that information is not simply knowledge. It is the raw material from which power is built and broken. The moment you reveal your next move, you transfer partial control of that move to whoever is listening. They now know where you are going before you arrive. They can prepare, position, interfere, or simply watch you arrive weakened. Most people reveal their plans not from carelessness, but from a deep and very human need to be witnessed. They want someone to see their ambition before the result exists. They want validation ahead of achievement. Machiavelli wrote that the ruler who announces his intentions has already diminished his position before acting on them. The announcement is not a display of confidence. It is an invitation for opposition to organize ahead of you. The powerful act, then speak. What they say confirms what already happened. It is never a preview. The less powerful announce, gauge the reaction, adjust based on the feedback they receive, and often abandon the plan before it begins. Silence about your next move is not paranoia dressed as strategy. It is the foundational architecture of effective action. And when you stop announcing, you will be surprised how clearly some people reveal their disappointment at not receiving that information. That disappointment tells you something important about why they were asking. It was not curiosity, it was surveillance. Rule 4 identifies a specific phrase, one that signals hidden positioning operating underneath the language of friendship. Rule 4. If someone says I'm not like the others. This rule rests on one of Machiavelli's most precise observations about the nature of dangerous courtiers. The most dangerous figure in any court never looked dangerous. They looked indispensable, uniquely aligned, and somehow different. When someone tells you early in a relationship that they are not like the others in your life, pause and ask a simple question. Why does this person feel the need to preposition themselves as uniquely safe? Authentic trust does not announce itself in week 1. It does not introduce itself through self-declaration. It reveals itself slowly, through behavior, under real pressure, when something is genuinely at stake. The phrase, "I'm not like the others," is in nearly every case filling in a gap the speaker believes exists in your defenses. They have identified what they believe you are looking for: loyalty, difference, a sense of being understood, and they are naming those things directly and early, before the relationship has produced any evidence of them. That is not transparency, that is targeting. Machiavelli would have recognized it immediately. He noted that the indispensable courtier always creates dependency before anything else. Dependency creates access. Access creates influence. Influence creates power. The process begins with a positioning statement. Once that positioning is accepted and embedded in your perception of them, everything that follows is filtered through it. Every action they take gets interpreted inside your belief that they are uniquely aligned with you, and that filter becomes the exact door they walk through when their actual agenda eventually reveals itself. Watch the person who tells you they are different on week 1. Observe carefully on month 6 when access is full. What they do in that later chapter will tell you everything their early language was designed to prevent you from seeing. If these first 4 rules have already changed the way you are seeing the people around you, stay through rules 5, 6, and 7. That is where this framework becomes genuinely uncomfortable. Rule 5. Why weak people pick the most dangerous enemies. This is the most counterintuitive rule in this volume, and Machiavelli embedded it in one of his sharpest observations about human psychology. You might assume that a weak person, aware of their limitations, would target small enemies, manageable conflicts, winnable fights. Machiavelli observed the opposite. Weak people often select the most powerful enemies available to them. The logic is unconscious but entirely consistent. If I am in conflict with someone significant, then I must be significant. The enemy becomes a mirror. The scale of the conflict functions as a substitute for actual power. But Machiavelli's warning was precise. The enemy you choose reveals the resources you actually hold, not the ones you imagine. And if your real resources cannot sustain the scope of that conflict, the conflict will consume you regardless of who was right. The powerful do not select battles based on emotion, pride, or the desire to prove something. They run 4 questions before engaging any conflict. Can I win this? What does winning cost? Is the prize worth that cost? And what happens to my position if I lose? If any one of those answers is unfavorable, the Machiavellian answer is often to not engage at all. This is not cowardice in his framework. It is intelligence presenting itself as restraint. The person who refuses to engage in unwinnable conflict is not retreating. They are preserving resources for a fight they can actually finish. Weak people fight to prove something to an audience, including themselves. Powerful people fight to secure something specific. That distinction is what separates the person who survives the court from the one who gets consumed inside it. Once this rule is fully internalized, the question stops being, who wronged me? It becomes, do I have what this fight actually requires to win? And is the prize worth what winning will cost? If the answer is no, Machiavelli said the most sophisticated visible move is often no visible move at all. Rule 6. If someone apologizes but does it again. Machiavelli had no patience for the confusion between language and behavioral patterns, and this rule is where that impatience is most direct. An apology is language. A repeated behavior is evidence. When those two things are in conflict, the evidence is always telling the truth. The person who wrongs you, apologizes sincerely, and then repeats the same behavior is not failing to learn. They are showing you, with complete consistency, who they are and what your forgiveness is actually worth to them. Machiavelli wrote that the ruler who pardons the same offense twice is not demonstrating mercy. He is communicating weakness, and weakness, once clearly communicated, does not invite gratitude. It invites escalation. The hidden enemy inside this rule is not necessarily the person who wronged you. The hidden enemy is the pattern you keep tolerating, because each individual apology arrives sounding sincere. Every forgiveness you grant without consequence delivers a lesson to the person receiving it, and that lesson is precise. This behavior costs nothing. The relationship absorbs it. Nothing actually changes. Return to the mentor and the colleague. Early boundary violations came with apologies, genuine-sounding ones. The colleague seemed remorseful each time. The mentor forgave and reset the relationship to 0 each time, but the behavior always resumed, and each cycle arrived at a slightly higher level of imposition than the one before. By the time the final betrayal came, the pattern had been running for 3 years inside polite language and sincere-sounding regret. Once you understand this rule, you do not become someone who refuses to forgive. That is what Machiavelli was building toward. You become someone who watches the behavior after the apology, not the quality of the apology itself. If the behavior resumes, the apology was pricing research. The price of the behavior turned out to be 0. And now both of you know it. Rule 7. The enemy Machiavelli said you can never defeat. Every rule in this volume has pointed outward, at the people around you, their language, their access, their patterns. This final rule points inward. Machiavelli considered it the most important observation in his entire framework on hidden enemies. The enemy you cannot defeat by looking outward is the version of yourself that refuses to see clearly. Machiavelli observed that the collapse of rulers was rarely caused by powerful external threats alone. More often, collapse was enabled by the ruler's own refusal to acknowledge what was already plainly visible to everyone else. The need to be loved, the need to be agreed with, the need to believe the best of precisely the wrong person. These are not virtues inside a structure of power. Machiavelli said they are vulnerabilities wearing the appearance of kindness. The internal enemy is the force that keeps the door open after the pattern has already shown itself 3 times. It is the voice that says, they didn't mean it. It won't happen again. They are different when it is just us. Machiavelli's framework across all 7 of these rules is ultimately about a single foundational discipline: seeing clearly, not seeing the worst in everyone, not building conspiracy out of ordinary behavior, not living in permanent suspicion, seeing what is actually there without the distortion of what you need to be true. The enemy within is the hardest to name because it resembles loyalty, hope, and love from the inside. But when it allows demonstrably harmful patterns to continue unchallenged, it is none of those things. It is the most dangerous hidden enemy in this entire volume because it lives inside you and you have been defending it for years. What Machiavelli was really teaching across all 7 of these rules is a single unified principle. The world does not divide cleanly into enemies and allies. It organizes itself into patterns and behaviors over time. Agreement is a pattern. Proximity is a pattern. Language is a pattern. Apology is a pattern. The person who reads those patterns accurately holds an advantage that almost no one else in the room possesses. Machiavelli did not build this framework to make you paranoid. He built it to make you awake. There is a critical difference between suspicion and awareness. Suspicion poisons everything it contacts. Awareness protects everything it covers. Suspicion looks for threats in every face, every silence, every pause. Awareness simply watches what patterns do across time. You now hold the complete hidden enemies framework, all 7 rules, in full. You know what constant agreement actually signals, and why the honest, frustrating voice is the only loyal one. You know why your closest ally carries the most risk, and how proximity without proof becomes a structural vulnerability. You know why silence about your next move is not distance or coldness. It is architecture. You know what the phrase, "I'm not like the others," is doing inside a relationship, and why it arrives when it does. You know that weak people choose powerful enemies as a substitute for actual power, and what that eventually costs them. You know that the apology without behavioral change is not remorse. It is a pricing discovery. The price is 0. And you know that the most persistent hidden enemy is not outside you. It is the part of you that refuses to see what is already there. Machiavelli did not write The Prince for kings alone. He wrote it for anyone willing to look at reality without softening it first. You are now one of those people. Volume 2 of the Machiavelli Code is coming this week. Power and control. The rules in that volume are built directly on what you have just learned, and they go considerably further. Follow pattern decode now. You do not want to break the sequence.